Snow was falling sideways against the glass walls of JFK Airport when Natalie Brooks opened the suitcase that no one was supposed to touch. The lost and found room had gone quiet in that strange way airports sometimes did during storms. Not peaceful, never peaceful, but suspended. The terminal outside was still crowded with stranded passengers sleeping across plastic seats, children crying into winter coats, rolling suitcases abandoned beside charging stations, announcements echoing overhead in tired mechanical voices. But inside the small back room behind Terminal 4, there was only the hum of fluorescent lights, the hiss of the radiator, and Natalie's own breathing. The suitcase sat on the metal inspection table like it had been waiting for her. Black leather, expensive, no airline tag, no name, no address, no scuff marks, except one silver scratch near the lock. Natalie had handled thousands of forgotten things in her 5 years at JFK. Wedding dresses folded badly into garment bags. Laptop cases left by executives who yelled at her like she had stolen them personally. Children's stuffed animals that made her heart ache. Passports. Medication. Designer coats. Cheap umbrellas. Half the city passed through her hands and rarely said thank you. But this suitcase felt different. She knew that before she opened it. Maybe it was the way it had appeared without being logged into the system. Maybe it was the way the security camera above her desk had blinked out exactly 3 minutes after it arrived. Or maybe it was the old man in the gray overcoat who had left it there, looked straight at Natalie through the glass partition, and whispered, "Do not give it to anyone but the girl." Then he vanished into the storm of delayed passengers. Natalie had called airport security twice. No one came. Half the airport was in chaos because of the snowstorm, and every available officer had been pulled toward a disturbance at customs. So she did what she always did. She followed procedure. She pulled on gloves. She logged the time. She photographed the suitcase. She checked the exterior. Then she opened it. There were no clothes inside. No toiletries. No shoes. No folded shirts smelling of hotel soap. There was an old gold watch with a cracked face. A photograph of a little girl standing beside a woman with dark hair and frightened eyes. And beneath them, wrapped in a black silk scarf, were classified files stamped with names Natalie recognized from news reports, court hearings, whispered documentaries, and newspaper headlines that never survived more than 1 day online. Bellini, Russo, De Luca, Santoro, Romano. New York's invisible royalty. Mafia families that people joked about until someone disappeared. Natalie's fingers went still. She should have closed the suitcase. She should have called security again. She should have stepped away. Instead, she picked up the photograph. The little girl in the picture was maybe 4 years old, wearing red mittens and a yellow coat. Her cheeks were round. Her curls were wild. She was smiling in the uneven way children smiled when they didn't know the world could become cruel. Natalie stared at the child's face. Her breath left her. It was her. The photograph slipped from her fingers and landed on top of the files. Outside the room, the airport lights flickered once. Then every monitor in the lost and found office went black. Natalie turned toward the door. On the other side of the glass wall, men in black suits were walking through the terminal. Not running, not hurrying. Walking. Passengers moved out of their way without understanding why. Even exhausted travelers could feel danger when it entered a room. It changed the air. It made people lower their voices before they knew what they were afraid of. The men stopped outside, lost and found. There were 6 of them. Then they parted. And Matteo Bellini walked in. Natalie had seen his face only twice before, once in a blurred newspaper photograph outside a federal courthouse, and once on a passenger's phone when someone had whispered about him near baggage claim. Neither image had prepared her for the real man. He was tall, dressed in a black overcoat, tailored so perfectly it made every other man in the airport look unfinished. His dark hair was pushed back from a face that looked carved from restraint. Sharp cheekbones, unreadable mouth. Eyes so cold they seemed untouched by human panic. The kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice because the world had already learned to listen. He entered the room and looked first at the suitcase, then at Natalie. The moment his eyes found hers, something almost imperceptible shifted in his expression. Not surprise. Recognition. Natalie's stomach tightened. "You opened it," he said. His voice was calm, low, controlled. Natalie forced herself not to step back. "I work here," she said. Unclaimed luggage gets inspected. One of his men moved toward the table. Matteo lifted one hand. The man stopped instantly. Natalie noticed that. One hand, no words. Immediate obedience. Matteo walked closer, his gaze never leaving her face. "What did you see?" he asked. Natalie's heart was pounding so hard she could feel it behind her ribs, but her voice stayed steadier than she felt. "Enough to know this doesn't belong in airport, lost and found." His eyes dropped to the photograph. For the first time, something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe. Or guilt. The door behind him opened again. This time, the men who entered were not in black suits. They wore dark federal jackets. "FB, step away from the suitcase," one of them ordered. "Hands visible." Natalie froze. Matteo did not move. The lead agent, a woman with silver blonde hair and a hard stare, raised her badge. "Matteo Bellini, you are interfering with a federal investigation." Matteo's mouth barely moved. "No," he said. "You are late." The agent's eyes cut toward Natalie. "Natalie Brooks?" Natalie's blood turned colder than the storm outside. The agent knew her name. "You need to come with us," the woman said. "Now." Natalie looked from the FBI to Matteo. "Why does everyone know who I am?" No one answered. That frightened her more than any threat could have. The federal agent stepped forward. "Miss Brooks, you are in immediate danger. If you stay with him, you will not survive the night." One of Matteo's men shifted. Another reached beneath his coat. Matteo spoke without turning. No weapons in front of her. The room went still. Even the FBI agent seemed momentarily confused by the order. Natalie looked at him despite herself. No weapons in front of her. Not no weapons. Not don't shoot. In front of her. As if her fear mattered. As if the violence in the room was allowed to exist only outside the edges of her breathing. The federal agent tried again. "Miss Brooks, the man standing beside you is the head of the Bellini crime family." Matteo's eyes remained on Natalie. "She knows." "No," Natalie said quietly. "I don't know anything." The agent pointed at the suitcase. "That contains evidence tied to your mother's death." The words struck Natalie so hard, she almost reached for the table to steady herself. Her mother, Natalie's mother, had died when Natalie was 5. At least, that was what her aunt had always said. A car accident, in Queens. No details. No funeral memory. No grave she visited. Just a blurry absence she learned not to ask about, because every adult in her life became uncomfortable when she did. Matteo took one step closer. Not touching her. Almost. But not. His voice changed. Barely. "Natalie." The way he said her name did something to the room. Made it smaller. Made the storm outside seem farther away. "You have 2 choices," he said. "Go with them and become a file. Or come with me and stay alive long enough to learn the truth." The FBI agent snapped. "He is manipulating you." Natalie looked at the photograph of herself as a child, then at the old watch, then at Matteo Bellini, a man who looked like he could ruin lives with a signature and end wars with a phone call. "Did you know my mother?" she asked. For 1 second, his mask cracked. "Yes." The room disappeared around her. Passengers. Snow. FBI. Mafia guards. Airport announcements. All gone. Only that one word remained. "Yes." Natalie lifted her chin, even though her hands were shaking. "Then you're going to tell me everything." The FBI agent reached for her arm. Matteo moved. Fast. Not violent. Not yet. He simply stepped between Natalie and the agent, his body becoming a wall of black wool and controlled threat. Under the cold fluorescent lights, in front of security cameras that had somehow come back to life, Matteo Bellini looked at the FBI and said, "She leaves with me." The agent's face hardened. "You are choosing war." Matteo did not blink. "No," he said. "I am ending one." Then the lights went out. For 3 seconds, the world became darkness and screams. When emergency power returned, red lights flashed through the lost and found room. Matteo's hand was around Natalie's wrist. Firm. Warm. Not painful. "Run," he said. And Natalie Brooks, who had spent her whole life obeying rules written by people who never noticed her, ran with the most dangerous man in New York. They moved through a staff-only corridor behind the baggage offices, past carts of delayed luggage and airport workers frozen in confusion. Matteo's men formed a moving shield around them, but he stayed closest to Natalie, his hands still locked around her wrist as if letting go would break something inside him. She hated that she noticed the heat of his hand, hated that in the middle of terror, her body registered his nearness. His coat brushed her shoulder when they turned a corner. His voice stayed low, controlled, issuing orders into a small earpiece. Seal Terminal 4 service access. Move the decoy to arrivals. No one touches the clerk. The clerk, not Natalie. The distance stung, though she didn't know why. They reached a stairwell marked authorized personnel only. Natalie pulled back. Matteo stopped immediately. I am not going anywhere until you explain why my childhood photo was inside that suitcase. His men exchanged glances, as if no one had ever spoken to him like that, and remained standing. Matteo slowly turned to her. Up close, he looked less like a headline and more like a man who had not slept in years. There is no safe place to explain it here. Convenient. His jaw tightened. A dangerous silence passed between them. Then, softly, he said, Your mother's name was Elena Brooks. Natalie stopped breathing. She worked at JFK? No. Was she FBI? No. Then what was she? Matteo's eyes held hers. The only witness who could have destroyed my family. The stairwell seemed to tilt beneath her. Natalie yanked her wrist free. This time, Matteo let her. My mother was a witness against you? Against my father. Against my uncle. Against men who are dead, and men who should be. Did your family kill her? His silence was the answer, and not the answer. Natalie felt something hot and sharp rise behind her eyes, but she refused to cry in front of him. Did you? One of Matteo's men looked away. Matteo did not. No. The word was quiet. Absoluta. But Natalie heard the wound underneath it. I was sent to, he said. The stairwell went, so still she could hear the storm pressing against the building. Natalie stared at him. You were sent to kill my mother. Yes. And now you want me to trust you? No, he said. I want you alive. Trust can wait. It should have made her hate him more. Maybe it did. But there was something in the way he said it, not asking forgiveness, not defending himself, not pretending he was innocent, that made her anger stumble against curiosity. Before she could answer, an explosion of sound cracked above them. Not a blast. Metal. The stairwell door being forced open. Matteo's head turned. His face became stone again. He moved Natalie behind him so quickly she barely understood what had happened until his back was in front of her, and his arm was angled slightly outward, blocking her from view. Down, he said. This time she did not argue. They descended into the service levels beneath JFK. A world Natalie had only glimpsed in maps and training videos. Concrete tunnels. Utility pipes. Yellow safety lights. Electric carts parked in shadows. The city above them vanished into a maze built for movement no traveler ever saw. Matteo released her only when they reached a steel door guarded by 2 more men. Beyond it waited a black SUV inside an underground loading bay. The vehicle looked impossible down there, polished and silent among airport machinery. Natalie stopped again. I'm not getting in that car. Matteo looked at her, unreadable. Natalie. No. You don't get to say my name like you know me. You don't get to drag me through tunnels, tell me you were supposed to kill my mother, then expect me to climb into your car like this is normal. His men went rigid. Matteo stepped closer. Slowly. Not enough to trap her. Just enough that the space between them became dangerous. You are right, he said. That surprised her. His gaze dropped briefly to her trembling hands before returning to her face. You owe me nothing. Not obedience. Not gratitude. Not trust. His voice lowered. But there are men inside this airport who will cut the truth out of you before midnight. The FBI has leaks. My family has traitors. And that suitcase has made you visible to every monster your mother spent her life running from. Natalie swallowed. You're one of those monsters. Yes. No hesitation. But tonight, he said, I am the one standing between you and the rest of them. She wanted to reject that. Wanted to call him arrogant. Wanted to run back toward the lights and uniforms and familiar procedures. But then her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. A photo loaded on the cracked screen. Natalie's apartment building in Queens. Taken from across the street. Then another message. Open the door when we arrive, or we open it for you. Natalie's blood went cold. Matteo saw her face change. He did not ask permission. He took the phone, read the message, and something deadly passed through his eyes. Not anger. Worse. Decision. Who lives with you? He asked. No one. Family? My aunt lives 2 blocks away. He handed the phone back. Enzo found your address. Who is Enzo? My uncle. The one who wants me dead? Matteo's eyes hardened. The one who killed your mother. Natalie felt the floor vanish beneath her. For a moment, she forgot the cold, the men, the SUV, the entire airport. All she could see was the photograph in the suitcase. Her mother's frightened eyes. her own little red mittens. A life stolen so completely that even grief had been kept from her. Then Matteo's hand came near her elbow. He stopped before touching her. That restraint almost broke her. "Get in the car," he said softly. "Let me get to Queens before he does." Natalie looked at the SUV, then at the man beside it. "If you lie to me," she said, "I will destroy whatever is left of your soul." For the first time, Matteo Bellini almost smiled. It was not warm, but it was real enough to unsettle her. "If you find it," he said, "it is yours." They drove through underground access roads while snow swallowed New York. Natalie sat in the back seat beside Matteo with the suitcase between them like a sleeping bomb. His men spoke in clipped codes from the front. Every few minutes Matteo received a call, listened, gave one sentence, and ended it. No panic. No wasted words. No explanation unless absolutely necessary. Natalie hated how calming that became. Outside the tinted windows, airport lights blurred into streaks of red and white. Planes sat frozen on runways. Snowplows crawled like insects. Sirens flashed somewhere behind them. She kept her hands folded in her lap to hide that they were shaking. Matteo noticed anyway. "Are you cold?" "No." "A pause." "Afraid?" She looked at him. "Yes." He accepted that without offense. "Good. Good? Fear keeps you alive." "And what keeps you alive?" His eyes moved to the suitcase. "For a long time," he said, "guilt." Natalie studied him despite herself. He had the stillness of someone trained never to reveal pain. But pain lived in him anyway. It was in the tension at the corner of his mouth, in the way he never leaned back fully, in the way his attention moved constantly between her, the windows, his men, and the road. A man who expected betrayal as naturally as weather. "Tell me about my mother," Natalie said. The car went quieter. Matteo looked out at the snow. "Elena Brooks was not supposed to matter to my family. She worked as a records translator for a shipping company near the harbor. She found coded manifests tied to weapons, money, missing people. She copied them. She tried to give them to federal agents." Natalie's throat tightened. "She was brave?" Matteo's gaze returned to her. "Yes." The single word warmed something broken in her. "No one ever told me that," she whispered. "They were afraid to tell you anything." "Why?" "Because your mother did not only have evidence." His jaw tightened. "She had a child." Natalie's eyes narrowed. "Me? No." The words struck her like a slap. Matteo reached into the suitcase and removed the photograph of the little girl. Natalie stared at it. "That's me." "Yes." "Then what do you mean, no?" He turned the photograph over. There was writing on the back. 2 names. Natalie. Isabella. Natalie read them once. Then again. Her voice disappeared. "I had a sister?" Matteo's silence confirmed it. The city lights blurred. "No," Natalie whispered. "No, I would remember. You were 4. My aunt would have told me. Your aunt was paid to keep you alive." Natalie slapped him. The sound cracked through the SUV. The driver's shoulders stiffened. The guard in the passenger seat reached instinctively toward his side. Matteo lifted one hand. Again, everyone stopped. He turned his face back slowly. A faint red mark spread across his cheek. Natalie's chest rose and fell. "Do not talk about my family like they sold me." His gaze was steady. "I am not judging her. You don't have the right." "No," he said, "I do not." The quiet after that felt heavier than shouting. Natalie expected him to threaten her, to remind her who he was, to punish the insult. He did none of those things. He simply sat beside her with the mark of her hand on his face and said, "Your aunt took money from me." Natalie went still. "What?" "After your mother died, Enzo searched for both daughters. I found you first. I gave your aunt money, documents, a new apartment, and one instruction." Natalie could barely speak. "What instruction?" "If anyone came asking about your mother, she was to call a number." "You?" "Yes." The SUV turned sharply onto a service exit. Natalie pressed back against the seat. "You've been watching me." "Yes." "How long?" Matteo looked at her, and for the first time she saw something dangerous beneath the calm. Not threat. Possession, held on a chain. "Longer than I should have." Her pulse moved strangely. She should have been disgusted, terrified. Part of her was. But another part, the loneliest part, the part that had spent years carrying her own groceries up 4 flights of stairs, arguing with landlords, working overtime, listening to travelers speak to her like she was furniture, wondered what it meant to have been seen by someone so powerful and so ruined. "You had no right," she said. "I know. Then why? His eyes did not leave hers. Because your mother died after trusting me. And because every year you lived felt like the only proof that I had not failed her completely. Something in Natalie's anger faltered. She turned toward the window so he would not see it. The SUV sped into Queens. By the time they reached her neighborhood, the street was almost empty beneath the snow. Storefronts were shuttered. Cars were buried white. Streetlights flickered in the wind. But there were 2 black sedans parked outside Natalie's apartment building. Matteo's body changed before the car stopped. Every soft human trace vanished. He became command. Keep her in the car. Natalie grabbed his sleeve. No, my aunt. He looked down at her hand on his coat. For a second, neither moved. Then he covered her hand with his. Not gripping. Not restraining. Just warmth over warmth. I will get her. You expect me to wait here? Yes. Then you don't know me at all. A shadow of frustration crossed his face. Natalie. She raised me. If your uncle is here because of me, I am not hiding in a car. His jaw worked. This was the first time she saw his control struggle against something emotional. His need to protect her. Her refusal to be controlled. At last he said, "Stay behind me." No promises. His eyes sharpened. Despite everything, a spark passed between them. Irritation. Fear. Something forbidden underneath. They entered the building through the back, climbing the stairs in silence. Matteo moved like he knew violence intimately, but did not enjoy wasting it. His men spread behind them. On the 3rd floor, Natalie smelled smoke. Not fire. Cigarette. Her aunt hated cigarettes. Natalie pushed forward. Matteo caught her around the waist and pulled her back, just as the apartment door opened. A man stepped into the hallway. He was older, elegant, silver-haired, wearing leather gloves and a wool coat dusted with snow. He looked less like a criminal than a retired professor, but Matteo's entire body went still. "Enzo," he said. The man smiled. Matteo. Natalie's aunt, Ruth, stood behind him with tears running silently down her face. One of Enzo's men held her by the arm. Natalie surged forward. Matteo's arm tightened across her body. "Let her go," Natalie said. Enzo's gaze moved to her. His smile deepened. "Elena's daughter," he said. "You look like her around the eyes. Less fragile, perhaps." Natalie felt Matteo's chest against her back, controlled and tense. "She has nothing to do with this," Matteo said. Enzo laughed softly. "You always say that about the women you fail." The words hit Matteo. Natalie felt it. Not physically, emotionally, like an old wound had been pressed under his ribs. Enzo noticed too. His eyes gleamed. "You should have killed Elena when your father ordered it. Instead, you hid her. You hid her little girls. You grew sentimental. And now look." He opened his arms. He opened his arms. "Athlay. You hid her little girls. He's sentimental. You hid her little girls. Federal files, family secrets, a clerk from Lost, and found becoming the center of a war." Natalie's voice was cold. "Where is my sister?" The hallway went silent. Enzo looked at Matteo. "Oh," he said. "You did not tell her that part." Natalie turned slightly, trying to see Matteo's face. He did not look at her. Her stomach sank. "What part?" Enzo's voice softened cruelly. "Isabella is alive." Natalie stopped breathing. "She has been alive all this time, hidden under another name, raised by people who knew exactly what she was worth." Enzo's smile sharpened. "And tonight, because you opened that suitcase, she is useful again." Natalie lunged. Matteo held her back. "Where is she?" Enzo tilted his head. "At a safe place. For now." Matteo spoke quietly. "You touch Isabella, you die before dawn. Insusahil. There he is, my nephew." So theatrical when a woman looks at him with disappointed eyes. Natalie twisted away from Matteo. "You knew my sister was alive?" Matteo looked at her then. The guilt in his eyes was so raw it almost silenced her. "Yes. The betrayal hurt more than fear. When were you going to tell me?" "When you were safe. I am standing in a hallway with your uncle holding my aunt hostage." "I know." "No, you don't know." Her voice broke despite her. "You don't know what it feels like to find out your entire life was edited by men who thought they had the right." Matteo flinched. "Barely, but he did." Enzo clapped slowly. "Beautiful, truly. I almost feel rude interrupting." Then he reached into his coat and removed the old gold watch from his pocket. Natalie's eyes flew to the suitcase in Matteo's man's hand. The watch was missing. Enzo had taken it. Matteo's face darkened. Enzo smiled. The watch is the key, of course. Elena was clever. She hid everything in pieces. Files in the suitcase. The access phrase in the photograph. Coordinates in the watch. One daughter to open the past. One daughter to inherit the consequence. Let Ruth go, Matteo said, in exchange for the clerk. No. The word came instantly. Possessive. Final. Natalie looked at him. Enzo did too. His amusement faded. There it is, Enzo murmured. The weakness. Then the hallway erupted. A shout from below. A crash of glass. Someone cut the power to the building. Darkness swallowed them. Matteo moved before Natalie could think. He pushed her down behind him, one arm shielding her head as chaos exploded in the stairwell. His men surged forward. Enzo's men dragged Ruth back inside the apartment. Natalie heard Matteo give orders in a voice so cold it made the darkness feel sharp. No graphic violence, only movement. Impact. Men shouting. A lamp breaking. The smell of smoke. And snow. And fear. Natalie crawled toward the apartment door. Matteo caught her. No. My aunt is in there. I know. Then move. Their faces were inches apart in the dark hallway, red emergency light flashing through the window at the end. For one reckless second, she thought he might kiss her. Or confess. Or break. His hand rose toward her face, stopped before touching her cheek, then curled into a fist. Stay alive long enough to hate me later, he said. Then he went into the apartment. Natalie did not stay behind. Of course she didn't. Inside, her small apartment had been torn apart. Cushions split. Drawers opened. Family photos scattered across the floor. Her aunt sat in a chair near the kitchen, shaking but alive. Natalie ran to her. Ruth grabbed her face with both hands. I'm sorry, her aunt sobbed. I'm so sorry, baby. Natalie's own tears finally broke. Why didn't you tell me? I was trying to keep you breathing. Across the room, Matteo moved like a shadow through the chaos. Enzo was gone. So were his closest men. But on the kitchen table, he had left something behind. A burner phone. It rang. Everyone froze. Matteo picked it up and answered. His face did not change as he listened. Then his eyes moved to Natalie. Her heart dropped. What? She whispered. Matteo ended the call. For a moment, he looked like the most powerful man in New York, and the loneliest. He has Isabella. Natalie closed her eyes. And? He wants the files, the watch, and you. At midnight. Where? Matteo's jaw tightened. Bellini Harbor. Ruth made a broken sound. Natalie stood slowly. Then we go. No, Matteo said. She turned on him. If you think I'm letting my sister die because you're used to making decisions for women you hurt, you really are insane. His eyes flashed. I'm not letting you walk into Enzo's hands. You don't let me do anything. The room went silent. Natalie stepped closer to him. She was still in her airport uniform. Her hair had fallen loose from its clip. Her cheeks were wet. She looked nothing like the sleek women who probably moved through Matteo's world in silk and diamonds. But in that ruined apartment, with snow hitting the windows and her whole life collapsing around her, she had never felt more herself. I am not your mistake to correct, she said. I am not my mother's ghost. I am not proof that you can be forgiven. I am Natalie Brooks, and if my sister is alive, I am going to get her. Matteo stared at her. Something in him yielded. Not weakness. Recognition. For the first time, he looked at her not like someone he had to save, but like someone powerful enough to stand beside him. All right, he said. Natalie blinked. All right? Yes. That easy? No. His voice lowered. Nothing about you has been easy. The air changed. Ruth looked between them through her tears. Natalie's pulse moved strangely again. Matteo stepped closer, but still did not touch her. If we do this your way, he said, you listen when danger moves faster than pride. If we do this your way, she replied, you tell me the truth before it becomes a weapon. His chaza held hers. Agreed. A dangerous alliance was born in the ruins of her apartment. By midnight, New York had turned into a city of black ice and red taillights. Matteo took Natalie not to a mafia club or a penthouse, but to an old church near the harbor, abandoned from the outside and alive beneath the ground. Behind the altar, a hidden staircase led down to a candlelit command room, where maps of the harbor glowed across glass screens. Natalie stood in the center of it all, wrapped in a dry coat someone had brought her, watching men twice her size avoid her eyes because Matteo had made it clear she was not to be treated like baggage. Still, she felt every stare. The curiosity, the doubt, the silent question. Why her? Why would Matteo Bellini risk a war for a plus-size airport clerk with snow in her hair and trembling hands? Natalie asked herself the same thing. Matteo stood at the far table, speaking with his people. He had changed into a black shirt. Sleeves rolled to his forearms, revealing scars that disappeared beneath the fabric. He looked less polished now, more dangerous, more real. Every few moments, his eyes found her. Not soft, not yet, but unable to stay away. A woman entered the church through the side door. Tall, beautiful, dark hair, diamond earrings, white coat. She looked at Natalie as if Natalie were a stain on marble. "Matteo," she said. "Tell me the rumors are false." Matteo did not turn immediately. Natalie looked at the woman, then at him. Something tightened in her chest. Jealousy was ridiculous at a time like this. Still, it arrived. Matteo finally faced the woman. Camilla. Natalie knew the name from one of the files. Camilla De Luca. Daughter of another mafia family. Engaged to Matteo through an alliance that had kept two criminal empires from tearing each other apart. The fiancé. Of course. Camilla's eyes moved over Natalie's body, her airport uniform, her borrowed coat. Then she smiled with perfect cruelty. "This is what you shut down JFK for?" The room changed. Matteo became very still. Natalie lifted her chin before he could speak. "My name is Natalie." Camilla's smile sharpened. "How sweet." Matteo's voice cut through the room. "Apologize." Camilla laughed once, then realized no one else did. Her expression hardened. "You cannot be serious." Matteo walked toward her slowly. Men stepped out of his path. "I am very serious." Camilla looked around, humiliated. "She is a clerk. She is under my protection. She is no one." Matteo's eyes turned colder than winter. "No," he said. "She is the reason everyone in this room is still breathing." Natalie's heart stumbled. Camilla's face changed. "This will break the alliance." Then it was already broken. "You would choose her over peace?" Matteo looked at Natalie. This time, everyone saw it. The obsession he was trying and failing to hide. "I would choose her over a lie." Camilla slapped him. No one moved. Matteo's face turned slightly from the impact. Then he looked back at her. "You should leave." Camilla's eyes filled with fury. "You will regret humiliating me." "No," Matteo said. "I regret waiting this long." She left like a storm in white. The door slammed behind her. Natalie exhaled slowly. "You have a fiancé." "Had. You ended a mafia alliance because she insulted me?" His gaze burned into hers. "I ended it because it was built by the man who killed your mother." That should have been enough explanation. It wasn't. Natalie crossed her arms. "And because?" The silence stretched. Men pretended not to listen. Matteo stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "And because I did not like hearing her call you no one." The words moved through Natalie like heat. Dangerous heat. Unwanted. Unavoidable. She looked away first. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Make it sound like I matter to you when you're still hiding things." His expression darkened with guilt. Before he could answer, one of his men spoke. "Boss, harbor cameras found Enzo." The screens changed. A foggy dock appeared. Black water, snow, warehouse lights. And there, standing beside a shipping container, was a young woman with Natalie's eyes. Isabella. Natalie reached for the table. Matteo's hand came to her back, steadying her before she fell. This time, she did not pull away. "She's alive," Natalie whispered. "Yes." Her sister looked thinner, pale, frightened but standing. Enzo stood beside her with one gloved hand resting on her shoulder like ownership. Natalie's fear turned into something fierce. "What's the plan?" Matteo's men looked to him. Matteo looked to Natalie. It mattered. That small turn of his head. That silent inclusion. "We give him what he wants," Matteo said. Almost. Natalie understood before he finished. "You're using me as bait." His jaw tightened. "I am using myself as the trap." At 12:17 a.m., the Bellini harbor disappeared into fog. Black SUVs rolled silently through the snow, headlights off, engines low. The water beyond the docks slapped against rusted pilings. Cranes loomed overhead like sleeping giants. Natalie sat beside Matteo in the lead vehicle, the suitcase on her lap. Inside it were copies of the files. The real drive had been hidden elsewhere. The watch was fake, though Matteo had refused to tell even most of his men where the real one was. He trusted no one completely, except, perhaps, he was beginning to trust her. That frightened him. She could see it. His hand rested near hers on the seat, close enough that their fingers almost touched. Neither moved. "You should have stayed at the church," he said. "You should have told me about my sister." A pause. "I deserve that. You deserve worse." "Yes." She looked at him. "Why didn't you kill my mother?" His gaze stayed forward. "She was holding you." Natalie's throat tightened. "She opened the door with you in her arms. You had red mittens. You were half asleep." His voice roughened almost imperceptibly. "My father had told me witnesses were numbers, problems, loose ends. Then your mother looked at me and said, 'Please, not in front of my girls.'" Natalie closed her eyes. "I could not do it," he said. "That was the first time I disobeyed him." "And the last?" "No." She opened her eyes. Matteo turned to her. "You were not the first thing that made me betray my family," he said. "But you became the one thing that made me want to survive betraying them." The words settled between them. Too intimate for the back seat of an armored SUV. Too late to take back. Natalie whispered, "Matteo." His name and her voice affected him. She saw it. His control tightened. His eyes dropped briefly to her mouth, then away. The almost touch returned. He lifted his hand slightly. Stopped. "Let it fall. After tonight," he said, "you will be free of me." The statement hurt in a place she had not given him permission to reach. "Is that what you want?" "No." The honesty was immediate. "Rav. But it is what you deserve." Before she could answer, the SUV stopped. The harbor waited. Enzo stood beneath a floodlight with Isabella beside him. Natalie saw her sister clearly now. Older than the photo by 25 years. Same eyes. Same mouth. A stranger and a lost piece of herself. All at once. Natalie stepped out into the snow. Matteo stepped out beside her. Immediately, every weapon in the harbor shifted toward him. He did not look at them. His eyes were on Enzo. "Nephew," Enzo called. "You brought the clerk." Natalie held the suitcase tighter. "I came for my sister." Isabella's eyes filled with tears. "Natalie?" The sound of her name in that voice nearly broke her. Enzo smiled, touching. "Truly, I would let you reunite. But family has always been such a dangerous thing." Matteo's voice stayed calm. "Let Isabella walk. Give me the suitcase." "Let her walk first." Enzo sighed. "Still pretending you control the room." Matteo's gaze moved past him. "Not pretending." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the harbor lights went out. Darkness crashed over the docks. Men shouted. Engines roared. Floodlights from Matteo's hidden vehicles snapped on from 3 directions, blinding Enzo's men. Federal sirens screamed from the far access road. Not FBI agents bought by Enzo, a different unit. One Matteo had fed evidence to hours earlier through Natalie's files. Enzo turned, furious. "You gave the files to the government?" Matteo's face was carved from cold devotion. "No," he said. "She did." Natalie's pulse slemmel. He had given her the choice. At the church, when she thought he was only preparing decoys, Matteo had asked her one question. "Do you want revenge or truth?" She had chosen truth, and he had built the war around her answer. Enzo grabbed Isabella and moved toward the container. Natalie ran. Matteo cursed and followed. Everything became snow, fog, steel, and flashing lights. Natalie reached Isabella first near the container door. The sisters collided in a desperate embrace that lasted only a second before Enzo pulled them apart. He seized Natalie by the arm. Matteo stopped 10 feet away. For the first time all night, Natalie saw fear on his face. Real fear. Not for himself. For her. Enzo noticed and smiled. "There it is," he said. "The great Matteo Bellini, brought to his knees by Elena Brooks's daughter." Matteo's voice was almost gentle. "Let her go. Give me the watch. You cannot open the vault. I do not need to open it. I only need to keep anyone else from doing so." Natalie understood then. The inheritance conflict was not about money alone. It was about legitimacy. The files, the watch, the sisters, together they proved Enzo had murdered, forged, stolen, and ruled through lies. If the truth came out, every alliance he built would collapse. Enzo pressed something cold against Natalie's side. Matteo's face emptied. A terrifying calm replaced the fear. "Enzo," he said, "if you hurt her, there will be no grave left for anyone to visit." Natalie believed him. So did Enzo. But Enzo was desperate, and desperate men always mistook women for shields. Natalie met Matteo's eyes. For a moment, the harbor disappeared. She saw what he wanted to say. Do not move. Trust me. I cannot lose you. She also saw what he feared, that she would sacrifice herself like her mother. Natalie did not. She slammed her heel down on Enzo's foot, drove her elbow back, and twisted with every ounce of strength she had earned from years of lifting luggage, hauling bins, carrying her own life alone. Enzo stumbled. Matteo moved. The world broke into motion. By the time Natalie fell to the snow, Matteo was there, one arm around her, pulling her behind him as his men closed in. Enzo tried to run toward the dock's edge, but federal agents and Bellini guards surrounded him together, an impossible alliance created by the files Natalie opened. Enzo looked at Matteo with hatred. You destroyed your empire for her. Matteo looked down at Natalie, then back at his uncle. No, he said. I destroyed yours. Enzo was taken away under the glare of harbor lights. No cheering followed. Only snow. Only sirens. Only Natalie and Isabella clinging to each other as if touch could repair 25 stolen years. Matteo stood a few feet away, watching them with an expression so guarded it hurt to see. He had won, and looked like a man preparing to lose everything. Dawn broke pale blue over New York. Natalie returned to JFK 3 days later. Not to work. Not yet. She came to collect the things she had left behind. Her coat, her mug, the paperback novel in her locker, the ordinary pieces of the life she had lived before one suitcase split it open. The lost and found room had been cleaned, the broken camera replaced, the metal inspection table polished until there was no sign of what had happened. But Natalie felt it anyway. The ghost of the woman she had been, the clerk who followed procedure, the woman who swallowed insults from passengers, the woman who believed being overlooked was safer than being seen. She stood in the doorway for a long time. Then she heard his voice behind her. I thought you might come here. Natalie turned. Matteo Bellini stood in the corridor, dressed in black as always, but without guards crowding him. Just one man at a distance, respectfully turned away. Matteo looked different in airport light. Still dangerous. Still impossible to mistake for ordinary. But tired. Human. Natalie folded her arms. Are you following me again? No. Good. A pause. I waited outside. Something in her softened despite herself. How respectful. I am learning. She almost smiled. Then the heaviness returned. What happens now? Matteo looked through the glass wall toward the terminal. Enzo will stand trial. The files are with federal prosecutors. Camilla's family has withdrawn from the alliance. You lost it. My empire? Yes. He looked back at her. I chose which parts deserve to burn. Natalie's throat tightened. And the Bellini family? Smaller, weaker, cleaner, if such a thing is possible. Is it? Probably not. His honesty pulled a quiet breath from her. He stepped closer, then stopped at a careful distance, always almost touching, always remembering she had reasons to fear hands that reached too quickly. Isabella wants to see you tonight, he said. She asked me to tell you, if you still answer my calls. Natalie looked down. Her sister was alive. Fragile. Angry. Kind. A stranger with her laugh. They had spoken for hours and barely begun. There were years missing between them. But not emptiness. Something had survived. Thank you, Natalie said. Matteo's expression closed slightly, as if gratitude hurt more than anger. You do not have to thank me. I know. The silence deepened. Passengers moved beyond them, dragging luggage, drinking coffee, complaining about delays. Life continuing with rude, beautiful indifference. Natalie looked at the man who had terrified her, lied to her, protected her, chosen her, and destroyed his own world rather than hand her over. I don't forgive you for everything, she said. I know. I still hate parts of what you did. You should. I don't want to be owned. His eyes sharpened. You never were. Protected can feel like owned when the person protecting you doesn't ask. The words landed. Matteo absorbed them slowly. Then he nodded. You are right. Natalie studied him. No defense. No manipulation. No wounded male pride. Just acceptance. That was the first apology she believed. Matteo reached into his coat and removed the old gold watch. The real one. He placed it on the counter between them. It belongs to you and Isabella. Natalie stared at it. The vault? Already opened. The inheritance your mother hid is being transferred into a foundation under your names. No Bellini control. No conditions. Her eyes lifted to his. You're giving up the money too? It was never mine. Matteo. His name came out softer than she intended. He looked at her like that single softness was enough to ruin him. I have one more thing, he said. From inside his coat, he took out a folded document. Natalie accepted it carefully. It was a deed. For a building in Queens. Her apartment building. She looked up sharply. No. It was owned by one of Enzo's shell companies. No, Matteo. It is not a gift. It is absolutely a gift. It is restitution. She gave him a look. He paused, then said, and a gift. Despite everything, Natalie laughed. A real laugh. Small. Surprised. Alive. Matteo stared at her as if he had never heard anything more dangerous. You cannot buy forgiveness, she said. I know. You cannot buy me. I know. You also cannot keep standing in front of me every time the world gets ugly. His voice lowered. I can stand beside you. The words changed the air. Natalie looked at him for a long moment. Then she stepped closer. This time, she was the one who reached for him. Her fingers touched the sleeve of his coat. Matteo went perfectly still. The most feared man in New York, frozen by the careful touch of a woman everyone else had underestimated. I'm not ready to trust you with everything, she whispered. His eyes held hers. Then trust me with 1 minute. 1 minute. I will earn the next. There it was. Not a demand. Not possession. Devotion. Restrained enough to be offered instead of taken. Natalie's fingers slid from his sleeve to his hand. His breath changed. Barely. But she heard it. Outside, snow began falling again beyond the terminal windows. Soft this time. Not a storm. Not an emergency. Just winter settling over New York like a secret the city had decided to keep. Matteo looked down at their joined hands, then back at her. I should leave, he said, though everything in his face said he did not want to. Natalie nodded. You should. He did not move. She almost smiled. Matteo. Yes? Call me tonight. His eyes darkened, not with danger this time, but with something deeper, something humbled by wanting. And if you do not answer? I'll answer if I want to. A faint smile touched his mouth. That sounds fair. It is. He lifted her hand slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She did not. He pressed his lips to her knuckles. Not dramatic. Not claiming. A vow disguised as restraint. Then he released her and walked toward the terminal doors. His black coat cutting through the airport crowd like a shadow, learning how to leave without taking everything with him. Natalie watched him go. For the first time in her life, being seen did not feel like danger. It felt like power. Later that night, she stood on the roof of her Queens apartment building with Isabella beside her, both women wrapped in coats, watching black SUVs idle across the street. Not too close. Not hidden. Waiting. Isabella glanced at Natalie. Is he always like that? Natalie looked down at Matteo standing beside the lead SUV, phone in hand, face turned up toward her window like he had spent years memorizing the shape of her survival. No, Natalie said softly. I think he's worse with me. Isabella smiled. Natalie did too. Her phone buzzed. A message from Matteo. I am outside. Not because you need guarding. Because I am learning how to wait. Natalie read it twice. Then typed back. Good. Wait. Across the street, Matteo looked down at his phone. For the first time since she had met him, he smiled like a man who had lost an empire and found something far more dangerous. Hope. Natalie slipped the old gold watch onto her wrist. Beside her, Isabella leaned her head against her shoulder. Below them, New York glittered under snow. Still corrupt, still beautiful, still full of secrets. And somewhere in the dark, the Bellini name was changing. Not because a mafia boss had become gentle, but because a plus-size airport clerk opened the wrong suitcase, demanded the truth, found her sister, broke a criminal empire, and made the most feared man in New York choose love without possession. Matteo Bellini had once ruled through silence. Now he waited beneath her window in the snow, learning the language of devotion 1 minute at a time. And Natalie Brooks, no longer invisible, finally understood the truth her mother had hidden inside a suitcase. Some women are not rescued because they are weak. Some women are protected because they become the one thing powerful enough to make dangerous men kneel.